Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, I am joined by Jeff Hardy. He is a 50-year veteran of the healthcare system. This is the second interview we'll have had about healthcare recently, which is great. He's the president and founder of Care for Peace Foundation, based in California, and we're going to talk all about healthcare. It says here that before he sold his healthcare consultation company, he facilitated innovative and widely publicized management operations and development for over 120 hospitals, including Kaiser and Catholic Healthcare West and Columbia and a bunch of other systems. So this is going to be great. We're going to find out all about health hospitals and healthcare systems and all this type of thing. And nothing more is a hot topic right now than healthcare. We had someone on the other day talking about this, so it'll be interesting to get your perspective as well. So welcome, Jeff, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm looking forward to a chat.
Yes, all right. Well, why don't we begin from the beginning? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your foundation and how you're trying to help people access healthcare?
Well, I think I'm going to have to back up and suggest another question.
Okay.
Because
Well, that's good. That's just what we do.
that's good. Very simply, I was helping the Myanmar government build a prototype healthcare center in the most rural area of their country. We built the prototype facility. It is a wonderful facility. We were in the process of planning 250 more of these facilities. It would change the country because all of a sudden we would be able to provide healthcare to some of the most distant people on the planet. Even more than most areas in Africa. I mean, there's no roads out there. Myanmar, most people don't even know where it is. It's just to the left of Thailand, south of China, east of India. It's this little area.
That big mess of a peninsula off of China, yes.
Exactly. And right when they were getting ready to build these unbelievable showcase facilities, there was a military coup that came in and took over Aung San Suu Kyi's government. And I was left holding the bag. I couldn't go back.
No.
I couldn't write anybody emails or anything. Thousands of people were put in jails. Many people were killed. And the top people that we were working with in the union government and the local people in the Chukpu Peninsula area where we were working, these are not people who would relish having an email from me, even though we were already email pals, because that email that I sent might get grabbed by the military and all of a sudden they'd get thrown into jail too. So all of a sudden I had nothing to do. So I wrote a book. And I decided that instead of writing a book about what we had done, I decided to write a book about all the things that I had been thinking about over that 6 to 10 year period when we were building this facility on the other side of the world, and was able to look at that country, other countries. I had worked in Nigeria, Curacao, Bahamas. I've worked all over the world, and if you're outside America, you don't really understand how we don't understand outside the country what's going on in the world. And in the country, we don't understand what's going on in the world. And I realized, wait a minute, I need to write something from a planner's perspective. So for 50 years, I've been planning healthcare facilities. What am I going to do? So what I decided to do was to write a book, and the book is going to be called, and is called, To Care for Peace, a Global Mandate to Secure the Second Human Evolution and Perpetuity. Now, that's a big ticket item. Why would I write a book like that?
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I need you to move your microphone up because we can barely hear you.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's perfect. Stay right there. Yes, continue.
Okay. So bottom
about
line,
your book then.
Yeah, bottom line is I needed to write a book that people would see that there's a lot to be done in the world, and it's not just what we perceive that needs to be done from America. We need to help the world. And right now, I'm in the process of starting a third uh, party for America. It's a global party. It means that this bickering that's going on between the Democrats and the Republicans, it's incessant. It's tearing us apart. We need to give those guys something to think about. And what we need to do is we need to have a global focused party. It needs to be a global party, and it needs to be issue based, not like Ross Perot's party or Ralph Nader's party or who was George Wallace's party. I mean, these are people oriented, issue
Andrew
oriented,
Yang and his
just,
forward, yes.
exactly. And so what I'm thinking is, look, everybody in the world knows what the global issues are, and most of the people in America know what the global issues are. We need to focus on the global issues because they aren't going away. They're getting more and more difficult to deal with. And so we need a party that is going to actually help this situation by facing it first. And so that was the whole idea I had and I got this idea in the middle of just the deep rural country of Myanmar. I said, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. The first human evolution is over. There are three stages of human evolution. I'm not talking about animals. I'm not talking about the evolution of animal, vegetable, or mineral. I'm talking about humans. Homo sapiens, no animals, no dogs, cats, or anything else. There's just us. And the first human evolution that started 2.5 million years ago.
Before we go there, I like this. You have a lot to say. That's good. That makes this a lot easier. Let's start from the beginning. Because I want to circle back to the global party because obviously Mr. Trump is taking us in a different direction. But first of all, let's start with why did you decide to get involved in building hospitals in Myanmar?
Well, that began 50 years ago when I was a hospital corpsman in the Coast Guard training to be a corpsman. And I took care of these guys coming back from the Vietnam War. You name it, snake bites, broken legs, bullet holes, you name it. And I had this incredible thought in my head that there's a relationship between care and peace. It's just the care that you have here in your heart and the peace that you get when you care. And I noticed that the sailors were the same way. They knew what care for peace is. And then after the guard, I was working in hospitals as lowly clerk and you name it, handing bedpans out, you name it. And I realized that every nurse I met knows how to care for peace. And so care for peace ended up becoming a mantra. It ended up becoming the title of our organization. It also became the title of a song I wrote that's on our website. And then, of course, it became the title of my book because I realized that whatever we needed to do, we needed to look at life from a planner's perspective and health care perspective. And so that's where the whole healthcare thing began for me. And I haven't left it. It's still right there.
No,
Care.
no. So yes, so that's a very interesting sort of thing. Kind of as a follow-up, the military government in Myanmar has ended, democracy has returned. Have whatever happened to your facility in Myanmar?
It's from what I understand, it is doing very well. Not because what we did was thanks to one of our advisors in Myanmar, who was Aung San Suu Kyi's counselor. She was on our board, and she said, you really ought to not just do healthcare, but do community development too, because these little places out in the middle of nowhere, they aren't really cognizant of the idea of community development. So it's now called a community development health center. And that ended up catching fire. Unbelievable. An example of that is they built a pond right by our clinic, and then they put these apparatuses floating in the pond that were to grow crabs. And the crabs is what they fed the cattle. So cattle were being given the crabs to eat. And so they ended up really developing their community and their business in the community. It's just it's beyond what I thought we were going to do. I thought we were going to bring them health care and share our tools for planning healthcare facilities. I did, and then they just took it away in such a marvelous way. And that's why we want to build 250 more of these, because they will be 250 more community development and health centers.
That's quite impressive. Okay, so we'll get back to the third evolution. We're going to go there. First, though, we're going to stop by your globalist party idea and your global issues. Obviously, President Trump, with his America First policies, is wanting the United States to take a huge step back from the world, its problems, its issues that cost us a lot of time, money, treasure. A lot of people want to focus inward. Why do you think we should worry about global problems? It's obviously a huge passion for you, but why should we be so concerned when we have so many problems at home?
Because home is now the whole earth. Yeah. I mean, look at global warming. Look at the seas rising. Look at overpopulation, over consumption, overburdening the planet's resources. Home is the planet. And if we don't take a global perspective and look at the world as we decide what we're going to do right here at our American home, then we're in trouble. We are in deep trouble. And I've been all over the world. I have been building clinics all over the world. I have helped governments and private entities all over the world. And I'll tell you, we are not the only ones who are seeing this mess, but we have the acumen, the knowledge, the capability of leading the charge. And so I want to make sure we get a political party that is not bickering with another political party about, I don't know, abortion or something, when that's just not an issue outside of America. It's just not an issue.
I mean, one could make the argument that we could use your expertise here in America. Try building a clinic in Mississippi
I
or
have.
something. Yeah.
I have. I started my whole career with Kaiser Foundation International, and I ended up working for Columbia HCA, designing a prototype hospital in Mayfield, Kentucky, that is still standing after their storms. I build hospitals all over and in America. And that was when I owned Zydra Corporation, a company that I started to be able to help build hospitals and do wonderful little management engineering things that were bringing people together and helping patients better, and most importantly, helping nurses. I have been nurse focused all my life. So I build hospitals and design hospitals so that it is nurse focus. I want the nurses to be up there on those nursing floors, those patient care floors, and not go to the end of their shift and their feet are hurting, and their patients at the other end of a corridor are falling out of bed. No, it's ridiculous how we've been designing hospitals in the past. But I started at home for at least 35 years before I started doing this work outside the country. I started at home. We have a lot to do here at home, but the globe is my home, and I am doing everything I can. I'm doing all these podcast television shows, broadcast television, all sorts of things, and I'm starting to consider doing speeches, because I want to speak to the youth of America, the youth here, and eventually to the youth of the world, because they're the ones who are going to inherit this mess. I want them to understand how important it is to plan. because planning, we aren't planning what I call the second human evolution. The first human evolution is over. It ended in the mid 60s. We're now in what I call the suspended human evolution. We're flopping around like fish on a deck. We need to plan the second human evolution. It's not going to get planned on its own. We have to take charge. God is not doing it, although I would invite God to join us. Invite, I shouldn't say it like that. I should say, let us work together with our spiritual entities and make sure we have a spiritual you know, process as part of the process of planning. Uh,
I mean, but at the same, I mean, what would you, I mean, I guess what was the difference between the first and the second human evolution? And how do you even plan for something? Because evolution, by its very nature, is survival of the fittest, and whichever one is the most adaptable. Not much planning there.
That's right. And that's the first human evolution. And the reason why I say it ended mid 60s, I'd say somewhere between the mid 50s and the mid 60s, is because that's when mutually assured destruction was identified as, hey, we're going to blow everybody up. It's also when humanity had conquered nature. It's also when the peace movement began. It's when existentialism came in from France. It's when Martin Luther King spoke and other great people and great ideas came together. Middle of the 60s, that's it. And the reason why that's when it ended is because this area that we're in right now is undefined. It is uncharted territory. We're flopping around. We've got this war in Ukraine, this stuff that Netanyahu is doing. We've got what this the Saddam this Sudan and the messes that are
Yes.
occurring there. I mean, it's just there's messes all over the place. And look at all the people getting on boats in North Africa. People are getting boats in Bangladesh. People are, we've got a major population problem. We are not addressing the problem the way it needs to be addressed, and that is through a planning methodology. You gotta back up and look at the world. But let's back up and look at the first human evolution is dead. The second human evolution has not been planned yet. Are we going to think that we could just let same old occur? And, oh, second human evolution will just occur. Oh, all our problems will be solved. Why don't we just solve the problems here in America and not look at the rest of the world? Forget it, guys. We
That is
are
certainly
the
the modern
world.
attitude.
We are the world. There's a song called We Are the World. I remember Cyndi
But
Lauper
I
and
mean, but
Huey
at the same time,
Lewis.
though, people could argue that's a very rather old-fashioned, out-of-date idea, and we've let our own country fall apart trying to solve global problems that refuse to come to any solution. Like climate change, which isn't going to move until India and China really seriously get on board, and neither of them will, sort of thing.
Right.
There's 193 countries to bring along and a population of, I think we're up to 8 billion people now. Like, this it's too huge for any one thing, one organization, one anything to try to do anything. And I think in the face of that, it makes sense for a lot of people to take a giant step backwards and try to do what we can where we can in our own backyard. That seems to be falling apart anyway.
Well, the first thing you said was, "Are we? This is what we tried to do in the past." No, we never ever tried to do this. We have not been globalized. We talk about globalization. We haven't even begun yet. Just because you come up with that word, I don't mean you. I mean
No, I
we
mean
come
that's
up
more of
with
an
that
I
word.
mean that's applies more to economics than literally anything else,
Yeah, yeah.
sort of thing. And I mean, yes, you also have. I mean, I think also since the pandemic, you also have a feeling of too much integration and it killed people. I mean, President Trump has withdrawn us from the World Health Organization. Um, and because of the, lockdown mandates and the recommendations about vaccines and masking and all this type of thing, and people kind of take it all as an affront. What do we do with all that in your vision?
Well, first of all, I have a real problem talking about Trump because I just think that it's everything that he's doing doesn't say to me he understands what's going on in the world.
Well, I don't
He
think he
doesn't
does. We're a
understand
safe
it.
space. It's okay. No, I don't. I don't think he knows
Well,
or cares. Quite frankly, I mean,
no,
I think a
you're right.
lot of his impetus is to get us out of the world, the globe, and its problems because it
Yeah,
seems like our own country needs help.
yeah, yeah. That's too bad. I've seen this country from outside this country, and I'll tell you, our country is so far ahead of everybody else in the world. It's unbelievable, and we don't know that. We we don't understand that. I
No, I
walked
mean
down a
I mean, you've never missed indoor plumbing more than going to a country where it's incredibly
ah,
rare. Or
right,
even just basic transportation. Like in Haiti, the main source of transportation are these big old trucks that drive along these dirt roads, and it's like
right,
a farm truck, and you just kind of grab. Literally, what you do is you just grab onto the side, and then the truck
right.
starts going, and you hang on. That's mass
Yeah,
transportation sort of thing. Unless you're in
yeah,
Port-au-Prince, then you might be able to get a car or something.
yeah.
And it's things like that, even just improved roads. Transportation is a huge issue. I mean, what in most of the rest of the world outside of major cities, transportation becomes a huge issue and problem. Roads are not improved, all this type of
Right,
thing. It's
right.
quite a massive sort of thing. And so I agree we are advanced in all those areas, but when it comes to, in this country, something like healthcare, it's expensive. A lot of people can't access it. We spend more than our peers for no universal coverage and worse outcomes. When it comes to jobs and employment, people are struggling. We have a high cost of living, but wages don't match it. We have, terrible housing shortage. I think for a lot of people now, it's like we've given how many billions to Ukraine when we need it here, for vets, for fire departments, for police, for all this type of thing. And so, yes, compared to the rest of the world, we may be so advanced, maybe so nice to live here. But I think for the people that are here, they look at it and say, the rest of the world's problems are expensive and they never seem to resolve themselves. Meanwhile, it seems like our own country's falling apart. It's time to turn inward.
Mm, that's scary. That's
No, but
really
I know. I
scary.
mean, I agree. But I think, given the last election, that's kind of where the country is at. So I guess if you had a chance to try to convince people that we need to care about the rest of the planet, what would you tell them?
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that by talking with people like you, I believe it's what you're doing that is going to really help get this process going because the leaders aren't doing it. We got Trump talking. I don't want to listen to Trump. I want to listen to you. And I want to listen to the people who are like you, who are bringing these issues to the fore. You're challenging me. Thank you. We need these challenges to be thrown out there for everybody, not just for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why this whole podcast thing is brilliant. It's beautiful because it really allows the dialogue to be have a breadth and a depth that you don't get just watching the nightly news or especially watching Fox. I mean, there's just it's just uh, no, I think we're doing it, but I cannot say stronger that just because a lot of people don't understand is not a good reason to not keep trying and communicate with them, which is what you are doing.
No, I agree, and I mean I definitely I will say for my own self, um, recent political events have definitely put me on the back foot and questioned everything that I've learned and believed and thought about since 2011 when I got involved in Occupy, which was
Mm,
a shockingly long time ago now. Seems like it wasn't that long ago. It's been 13 years. Um,
right.
and and I kind of wonder, where I sort of what did I miss? What was I not seeing? All this sort of thing, because it felt like we were finally sort of making progress forward. And I think the problem is it was too much change, too fast for too many people, and especially once the pandemic happened, it was all about getting back to normalcy. And I think a lot of people were very shocked by a lot of the policies coming out of the pandemic. And I've seen on Twitter, been told by people that they will go to arms in the street before they ever go through pandemic regulations ever again, which is frightening because we have H5N1 coming that is
Yeah,
here
yeah.
and going between humans and all this sort of thing. And people literally said they're not doing anything this time around. We've just pulled out of World Health Organization. Trump's just banned government agencies from giving guidance to people, all this type of thing. And people I guess would rather die of the flu than wear a mask or stay inside or whatever have you. I just I appreciate your message about, the future and human evolution and a global view. That's the view I have and I share in a lot of my work. And I love looking at what the rest of the planet is doing. And if I had my way, I'd run around the world, find the best policies, the best ideas, and bring them back here and truly make this country great. However, it
Right.
seems like the national mood is the exact opposite of that. How does that make you feel? Like, I mean, what have you been going through emotionally, psychologically, thoughtfully in the last several months in light of all that has happened?
Well, first of all, I don't. The national mood is divided down the middle, just like the Republicans and the Democrats. I mean, so I don't look at the national mood. I'm looking at those of us who, like you, are taking a more global view. Now, you said that you were involved in the Occupy movement.
I was, yes.
Okay, now there was an article that was written in this last week's Los Angeles Times about me, and what my comment was about all these movements that are great in concept, but then they don't follow through.
Oh,
And
Occupy was the guiltiest of that.
exactly. So, well,
Yeah.
you can read the article because I talk about the Vietnam, the marching of Vietnam. We did not stop wars. I mean, so just marching didn't do it. We've got to do something. And what I'm saying, I've been a planner all my life. It's not that hard, but we've got to start a planning process. So when I look at all the people in the world that you're talking about, or you're talking about the people in America and all the people who think this way, well, sure, they're looking at the news and that's what they're getting it. They're looking at their social media and that's where they're getting it. They don't have something that they can say, wait a minute, there's an alternative. And I represent discussing the alternative. I am more than a planner, I'm a pre planner. I'm the person who pulls a whole group of experts together, doctors, nurses, owners, radiology techs, you name it, and say, okay, what do you want to do? Oh, we want to build a hospital. Wait a minute, back up. What's the situation? What's the problem? How are people going to get paid? Excuse me. How is the system going to pay for the care? You name it. I mean, I've got all sorts of failures. I've helped build a hospital when they called me too damn late. The architect was sitting there in the first meeting. I said, "You got to be kidding." This, you're going to build a hospital for how many patients? Well, I just noticed that all your patients are HMO patients. The people who live in this town are either Medicaid, Medicare, or Kaiser, or you name it. And sure enough, the hospital opened. They built the damn thing. They opened it, and 18 months later, they closed it after spending a hell of a lot of money. Oh, I saw it last week. I just drove by it. It's a ghost town hospital. It's because they didn't plan. But even more than that, they didn't pre-plan. Pre-planning is what you and I are doing right now. We're talking. We're discussing what the situation is and what needs to be done. And what needs to be done is a lot of talk so that we can decide what the process is going to be. The system is not the solution. The process is the solution. We have to have a process. Systems are what ends up at the end of a process. AT&T's the system is the solution. That's great. You really think that's right? Let me tell you, if you're going to have the right system, you better have the right process to get there, and that better include a lot of experience and a lot of trial and error and everything else to get there. So you talk about Trump. I think, my God, what's he doing? He's he's just going in like a bull in the china shop, and we are the china, and he's just walking all over us. And now
Well,
I'll
no,
tell you
no,
what.
you're not. I mean, no, I think your analysis there is absolutely spot on. And I think, I mean, there's so many times in human history when, the best of intentions sort of thing leads to disaster because people don't understand
Right,
the actual situation. But I think people are also frustrated with the system and the way that things are, and they're looking for it to solve issues and problems, be responsive to them, make shifts and changes. And it hasn't, and it isn't. And I think that's why, people vote for people like Trump, is because he comes in and promises not only to be responsive to their needs and desires, but to smash the institutions that
right.
aren't doing that. And I think that is very appealing when people view that the system is broken and no longer working for them. And
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's all, and I think for better or for worse, I think part of the problem with the system as it has been for about the last 30 years or so is that people have watched their jobs get offshored to China. They have watched their towns be hollowed out. They've watched Walmarts kill Main Street. They've watched corporations and companies get exponentially wealthy. The pandemic was one of the biggest transfers of wealth from the bottom to the top in human history. Sort of thing. And their kids can't find jobs. Don't have grandchildren because people can't afford to have children. People can't afford to buy a house. People can hardly afford to buy a car, even a used car, much less a new car. All this sort of thing, and people are wondering, if we can't live well in our own country, what on earth are we doing paying for a war in Ukraine? And I don't, and this, and my only response is, if we don't stop them in Ukraine, we'll end up fighting them ourselves. But that answer doesn't solve any of the rest of those issues. It doesn't solve the problems around why life in this country isn't not good and is kind of the way it is. So I feel like it's very hard to have this conversation.
yeah, yeah. I'm I don't feel it's hard, and I'll tell you why. It's because I think we're at a point now where we either plan or we don't. And it's that old adage that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's like we either take the ball, realize what the ball is. It's the globe. it's the
That's
whole of
very
Earth,
clever. That's very clever.
and we better do something. And doing something is process. Yeah, this whole thing about Trump saying, okay, forget the World Health Organization. And I'm saying, well, I'm sure glad the World Health Organization is stick around, because that is a system. And that system has done amazingly wonderful things. So has our NIH. Look at Fauci and his whole organization, NIH, and is phenomenal. What are you going to do? This is a typical baby throwing the baby out with the bathwater type thing. Oh, well, I don't like the system, so get rid of it. No, there are ways of dealing with problems in systems, and you exercise failure avoidance processes and all sorts of different peer review. I mean, look, that's what they do in the healthcare field. The doctors get together and they say, well, no, wait a minute, this didn't go right. Let's talk about it so that it won't happen again. You don't just say, okay, there's no more peer review. Trump does not understand process, and he's going to get caught in that problem. That is one of the biggest problems that he's sitting on. He does not know the difference between a process and a system. It's just really clear to me. And I don't even look at it from a political standpoint. I look at it, okay, you got the United States Constitution. Okay, so I don't carry it in my pocket, I carry it in my heart because the United States Constitution requires us to follow certain processes. And that's why we have amendments. That's why we're constantly dealing with the Second Amendment, and what the Second Amendment is. But we've got to be looking at, okay, how do we implement these constitutional amendments so that they are something that we can control? Process and control has to go along with the development and the continued development of any system.
No, certainly. I definitely I see and understand that. Now I have kind of a that's good. I have a weird question. You've mentioned planning and whatnot, and how much of a planner you are. How did you get into that? Why did you decide to pursue that as a skill set?
Oh, I think it was all accidental. I worked
You
well.
fail you didn't plan to get into planning, you accidentally fell into planning. That's good. That's funny.
No, but I planned to say yes to life. And when I was in a hospital in Sacramento, in a being a relief ward clerk while I was putting myself through school, I went from one nursing station to the next so that the ward clerks in those stations could all go have a break. And by the time I relieved the last one on break, I went around the from one to the next and relieved them for lunch or whatever the break was. But during that time, I was seeing a whole bunch of things that didn't seem to be right. And I told the administrators, so all of a sudden, I was a process guy. And I was only 19 years old. All of a sudden, I was coming to the department head meetings. I loved it, and they loved me. It was amazing. And then when I started my company, I started by doing paper cleanup. I went and did records retention programs in hospitals. I was a hero in every hospital, you name it, because there was so much paper in boxes, medical records in boxes, radiology films all over the place, administration records all over the place. You wouldn't believe every single department had paper all over. So I just went in and said, okay, I'm going to quantify it. I'm going to figure out which pieces of paper can get thrown away. Oh my God. I got taken out to lunch by every administrator. And that's when they said, and so how did you get here? And I says, well, I was in the Coast Guard, and then I ended up going to Kaiser and helping them with their processes. Oh, yeah, well, how would you like to help us build the hospital? And that literally happened. Administrator said, how would you like to build a hospital? So I just kept saying yes. And little by little, I built that hospital. And that's the same hospital that I built, by the way, that fell apart in 18 months. My first hospital, it was a disaster. But I mean, they already had their architects, which is a good thing because I'm not an architect, and I'm not a radiology. I'm not an architect. I don't do anything except facilitate. And so then Columbia got a hold of me, and from that point on, Columbia HCA, I was designing their prototype hospital, which was in Mayfield, Kentucky, and I am pleased to say that it's still standing, it's solvent, and the nurses love it. So, what can I say? And then I sold my company and decided to do nonprofit work and help people who really needed the care all over the world. Went to Nigeria, went to Bahrain and the Persian Gulf, Curacao, Vietnam, Thailand, and then finally Myanmar. That was my final one.
Yeah, well, before we go, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book? Because we haven't really touched on that specifically. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, the book is my meager attempt at writing what I think and getting some amateur editors to help me. So that's what my book is. But it's basically about caring for peace, because if you can bring that to the table, then you'll be able to look at things like the three stages of human evolution, back up and take a look at where we've been. I have some tools in the book. I've got 4 templates in the book so that while you're talking about the the first human evolution and where we've been, and then what the second human evolution might look like from a global perspective. Uh, those templates will help the people who are reading the book to get an idea of what I'm talking about so that they can start putting their own words to it. I'm very much into the pre-planning, and so the book is about pre-planning. There's a concept in the book about from to, and that's a very simple concept. It's how are we going to go from some of the things that Trump represents to some of the things that a more global perspective would represent? How can we go from the animosity of that comes up through the abortion discussion to a rational decision so that we can get away with that and focus on some of the other issues that we have to deal with in the world. And so I put everything in a from to scale so that people can start saying, wait a minute, where am I from thinking about women in the military versus women shouldn't be in the military? Where am I? And that's a from to, because otherwise we're going to start saying opinion is more important than looking at what the range is. What's the range? Okay, the range is women in military or no women in military. But what's some of the middle ground? Well, how about women doing some of the planning work, some of the yeoman work, some of the things that don't include being on the front line getting shot or shooting. I mean, and so that's a discussion, but you can't have that discussion if you just come to the discussion with your opinion. No women in the military, or women can be anywhere in the military. That opinion set is not productive in the long run. We've got to have the discussion, and that needs to include looking at history. Why do women join the military in other countries? And I'm thinking Israel. Women have been in the military in Israel for years, with Switzerland, all over, Ireland. Okay, what did they do? So you have to get information and you have to bring it into the discussion. And that's why you've got to understand that there is a from to with all issues, that you have to be able to look at an issue as, okay, what's the scale? And start talking scale, and that'll get you out of the opinion-oriented mentality that you have to be in if you are Republican, and you have to say that the election was stolen. There's there's no from to in that one. You either say the election is stolen or you're no longer a Republican.
No, fair,
So
fair enough. That's
anyway, that's just
fantastic.
the book is getting started in the discussion,
Good,
and
good.
that's
All
what
right.
you
Well,
do.
why don't you, now that is the time we do plugs. My hands are very dry, but this is when we do plugs. So why don't you tell us where we can find the book and where we can keep up with you online?
Well, if you live near me, I give you the book for free because I did not write this book to sell it, but it is in Amazon because I have had requests from different places all over the world asking and actually ordering the book from Amazon. You can just enter on the internet to Care for Peace, and it'll be up there somewhere. And you can get it in Kindle, or you can get it in softbound, or if you're really crazy, you can get it hardbound. But I highly recommend just going and looking at the Amazon document on the. You don't even have to buy it because the back cover blurb says it all. you know, I mean, I
Okay.
know this is not
And so social media, website, anything like that?
no, I mean, we're building our careforpeace.com website. Um, and we have careforpeace.org and careforpeace.com, and people can go to that. But you don't get the book in those sites; they're being redone. Um, they're, so
Right.
That's it. All I ask people to do is talk about it. Discuss this thing and listen to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
And thank you. It's been lovely, and I really appreciate your challenge.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.